This is, I think, a continuation of the story that has been playing out for months. There is no classified marked information on those emails sent or received by me.
The non-disclosure agreement you signed as Secretary of State says that that really is not that relevant. It says classified information is marked or unmarked classified, and that all of you are trained to treat all of that sensitively and should know the difference.
Well, of course, and that's exactly what I did. I take classified information very seriously. I think it's pretty clear they're grasping at straws.
The last time Hillary Clinton ran for the White House, she hammered the Bush administration over the issue of secret emails. Watch.
Our Constitution is being shredded. We know about the secret wiretaps. We know about the secret military tribunals, the secret White House email accounts. It is a stunning record of secrecy and corruption, of cronyism run amok.
What a hypocrite. I mean, it's obvious.
Hillary Clinton's email scandal may have just gotten worse, a lot worse.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material.
The State Department is now saying that for the first time that, quote, top secret emails were sent using Clinton's private server, also refusing to make 22 of those emails public because of the classified information they contain.
According to this letter, first obtained by Fox News, Hillary Clinton's emails on her unsecured personal server contained intelligence from the U.S. government's most secretive and highly classified operations.
Some of the emails contain information so sensitive, most lawmakers can't read them.
These are the crown jewels of the American intelligence community of the United States government.
I talked to 3 national security lawyers who deal with this for a living. I mean, this is all they do today. And they all said, without exception, there's no question this person would have lost her clearances if this were a senior GS 14 or 15 employee, probably would have lost his or her job, and possibly would have already been indicted.
There have been so many crimes committed because of the existence of the private server and the unencrypted private server and unencrypted personal devices used by her and all of her staff that there's just no way that the FBI will not recommend to the Justice Department that an indictment be brought or a grand jury be impaneled. If you negligently maintain, store, fail to properly secure classified information, no matter what its level, that is a crime. And that is precisely what Secretary Clinton and her entourage did. They maintained classified information over 4 years on an unencrypted private server. And based on Robert Gates' statement that it was hacked, severe damage was done.
If you've done espionage cases, you can see the handwriting on the wall. The FBI and the Justice Department, while they probably are not happy about this, they really don't have any choice. When she used, along with her staff, unencrypted servers, unencrypted BlackBerries, and unencrypted iPads, knowing that all of their email traffic would go on those devices, they violated at least 2 federal laws involving espionage, unlawful storage and gross negligence in the handling of intelligence. The Department of Justice and the FBI really don't have any choice right now. This is basically an open and shut case. There's going to have to be a grand jury. And we've also learned something really startling last night on a telephone call involving a Department of State case in another matter. We learned that people in the Department of State actually believe now that all of her emails are in the custody of the NSA because of the metadata program and counterintelligence programs.
Wow. Those emails released show some documents that are now classified as secret. If they're so sensitive now, why weren't they then?
Of course they were then. Their classified information is both marked and unmarked. You look at the document and someone who understands it has stamped top secret or classified on it. Other times there's classified material and it hasn't been marked yet by someone who knows better. Mrs. Clinton knew better. She didn't mark it, and according to the Washington Post, several of the emails that she created and sent had classified material in it.
And as Secretary of State, would it be her responsibility to mark it classified.
Absolutely. She has what is called original classification authority.
I thought so.
So she gets material, and she's supposed to evaluate it and make sure the classified material is either marked, both marked and handled appropriately and stored appropriately, which wasn't done on this separate server.
And I noticed when she talked about sensitive information, she said clearly that she was not aware of any email that was marked classified that went through her personal server.
She's changed her explanations. Originally, she said she had no classified material. Now it's marked classified material. I tell you what, most of the government material that is classified isn't marked.
Among the latest batch of emails released by the State Department is this exchange between Clinton and then Senator, now Secretary of State John Kerry. Sections are fully redacted, citing classified information. Striking because both Kerry and Clinton were using unsecured personal accounts. And this 2009 email released after a federal lawsuit suggests the State Department's senior leadership was trying to make it as easy as possible for Clinton to check her personal email.
The top administrator in the State Department, Patrick Kennedy, who was still there, overseeing the response to all the inquiries about Hillary Clinton, was in on Hillary Clinton's separate email network and system from the get-go.
Tonight, some 48 hours after we first learned Secretary Clinton conducted all, that's the critical part, all of her State Department business on a private email account. You see, federal law makes it a crime punishable to up to 3 years in prison if someone has records and, quote, willfully and unlawfully conceals or destroys such records. Did she conceal those records for years when those 7 committees were demanding to see her professional correspondence? Moments before we came to air, I spoke to Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. So is she in trouble legally?
She's in a lot of trouble legally, and there's 2 sources of her trouble. One is if she retained on her personal email account using the Clinton server at her home or near her home in Chappaqua, New York, classified materials, classified documents. She arguably violated the same statute that General Petraeus has agreed that he will plead guilty to, which prohibits retaining classified information in a non-government, non-secured way. That's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. There's no grand jury. There's no trial jury. But the punishment is up to a year in jail and a $100,000 fine for each document.
Does it have to be a willful thing? She's going to say, I did it all. All my information was there. I didn't do that willfully. I wasn't willfully flouting the law.
Well, she doesn't have to willfully flout the law, but she has to willfully retain the document. If she received a classified document or discussion about classified information, for example, we're going after Osama bin Laden. We think he's in Abbottabad, and that comes from the president or from the Secretary of Defense, and that is in her computer in her home, rather than secured in a government computer. She has violated the same statute that General Petraeus is going to plead guilty to.
What are the odds that when she did all of her emailing on the private account, that in her entire tenure as Secretary of State, she never sent or received anything classified, which is what the State Department's claiming right now?
In my view, it would be inconceivable. I don't know how she could do her job, because she had the highest security clearance there is. She had the same security clearance as the president, the Secretary of Defense, and the head of the CIA, so that she could openly and clearly deal with these national secrets. It's inconceivable she never dealt with it.
All right, let's talk about number 2, because number 2 would get her in even bigger trouble, and now we're talking potential felony.
Yes, number 2. The other way that she's in trouble is a person who knowingly and willfully destroys or conceals government records. This is a felony punishable in jail by up to 3 years, and, are you ready for this, disqualification from holding public office under the United States of America in the future.
That is stunning.
Well,
what would they have to prove? That she knowingly did it, and that she unlawfully did it?
Yes, and the it is concealing from the government, documents that she knew or ought to have known belonged to the government.
She's been turning over documents, but not all documents.
Correct, because instead of going to the government and saying, I want my personal documents, the government had to go to her and say, we want the governmental documents. So instead of the government giving her the personal ones, she decided what was personal and what was governmental.
And that's where we are today. That is the current status, that she has decided what we get and what we don't get.
That act of possessing and deciding is the act of concealment, which is made criminal by the statute.
Classified information may have been compromised due to Ms. Clinton's personal email use, exposed in potentially hundreds of emails, according to 2 Obama administration inspectors general. Now, that's not Republican House members, but the internal monitors of Barack Obama's State Department and intel agencies. They referred this issue to the Justice Department and the FBI, which confirms they're considering an investigation. Now, that investigation could involve the key question: was the Clinton server compromised by foreign governments? The Clinton campaign, of course, forcefully pushed back early Friday morning, noting that this is a security investigation, not a criminal one. The inspectors general specifically stated in their letter this wasn't a criminal referral, even though, as the New York Times clearly states, mishandling classified information is a crime. And if you don't believe that, just ask David Petraeus. Back in March, Clinton was adamant that no classified information was ever trafficked on her private account.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. So I'm certainly well aware of the classification requirements and did not send classified material.
But now the Clinton campaign is admitting that the situation is much more complicated. On Friday, they said any released emails deemed classified by the administration had been done so after the fact and not at the time they were transmitted. But even after the corrections, the New York Times stated flatly that the Clinton claim was not true. And yet the next day, on Saturday, Hillary Clinton herself seemed to be again in denial.
The facts are pretty clear. I did not send nor receive anything that was classified at the time.
That's just counter to the reporting. That's counter to the State Department inspectors general, and that's counter to the intelligence agency's inspectors general. It's stunning that she was still saying that this weekend. Hillary Clinton now claims the documents weren't classified, quote, at the time. But again, the inspectors general says they were, even if they weren't marked classified. The Obama administration inspectors generals looked at the information in the emails Clinton provided and made a preliminary finding that she was and is wrong. They say the information, some from the CIA and some from the NSA, was clearly classified when it was sent, and it's classified now, and it's always been classified. According to the IGs, the 4 emails in question did not contain classified markings and/or dissemination controls, even though in her press conference she said she was certainly well aware of classification requirements. Unfortunately for the Clinton camp, that's just not the only place that Hillary Clinton skirted the truth in her March UN press conference.
After I left office, the State Department asked former secretaries of state for our assistance in providing copies of work-related emails from our personal accounts. I responded right away and provided all my emails that could possibly be work-related, which totaled roughly 55,000 printed pages, even though I knew that the State Department already had the vast majority of them.
But that claim, of course, has also been proven false by journalists. Disclosures by Sidney Blumenthal to the Congressional Committee investigating Benghazi shows that 9 emails and parts of 6 others related to Libya weren't included in those emails that Hillary Clinton handed over. Here's more from Hillary Clinton back in March.
I wanted to just use one device for both personal and work emails instead of 2. It was allowed, and as I said, it was for convenience, and it was my practice to communicate with State Department and other government officials on their .gov accounts. So those emails would be automatically saved in the State Department system to meet record-keeping requirements, and that indeed is what happened.
Two things. Clinton has been found using at least 2 personal devices, not one. She used her cell phone and an iPad as email as Secretary of State. And the State Department did not automatically save all departmental email until February of this year. Only a tiny fraction of its emails were saved. And that's under the assumption that she exclusively used State Department emails. All in all, this appears just to be the tip of the iceberg. The State Department inspectors general say they found classified material sent to and from Clinton's Chappaqua home-baked server, even though they only had access to a small sample of 40 emails. Of those, they found that 4 contained government secrets. That is information that, if exposed, could potentially harm national security. It's information that's meant to be transferred and stored exclusively on secure computer networks with special safeguards. Again, of the self-selected emails the Clinton camp chose to release, 1 in 10 of those reviewed emails seems to have held classified information. Put in perspective, Hillary Clinton turned in over 30,000 emails she said were work-related. She destroyed tens of thousands of emails, wiped clean her home-baked server, and possibly destroyed copies of countless classified documents improperly stored and sent from the United States top diplomat. The extent of the cover, if there ever was one, will not be known because that evidence, which could either clear or convict her, was destroyed by the politician who is now at the center of this national security debate. Unfortunately, there seems to be much more to come from this story, but what we've seen so far is that it's unlikely that this is going to be the last time Hillary Clinton will be changing her story. Mika, you go through it, and you go back. We could talk all morning about that UN press conference. It's just baffling to me, the thing that they sent her out to say things that they knew were going to be countered in the press in the coming weeks and months. This is just a growing problem.
A Connecticut technology firm is confirming that it kept a previously unknown backup copy of Hillary Clinton's private communications. It says it turned all of this over to the FBI, increasing the chances of recovering information that Mrs. Clinton says she deleted. Information her critics think she was trying to hide.
Well, so the Clinton team hired Platte River Company, which is an IT firm. So they hired as a tech experts to help manage the server. What they did is they took the server, they put it off-site in the cloud in a hosting facility. And then Platte River, without asking anyone, said, hey, we should probably back up this data because it's pretty important. They called the data company to do a live backup, and it was what we call in the business, it was a warm backup. There's cold, warm, and hot backups. And so what that means is that all the data flowed from the Clinton server that was in Platte River to the Datto Corporation. So if power went out in Platte River and Hillary needed to get her emails, that they would have a warm backup that they could just turn on. And it's a virtual server in the cloud that had 100% of the settings. So with the FBI, as long as they have this data, they can get much more than email. They can get security settings on the server. They can get who had access to the server. They're going to be able to see a much bigger picture than just seeing what emails were on the server. And if there was malware, like we discussed, if there's malware, they're going to be able to see if there's malware on that server.
Plus, the FBI also seizing 4 State Department computers today. Imagine that. Going into the State Department and seizing them physically. Deepening its investigation into how top secret classified information wound up on Mrs. Clinton's private system.
Megan, just like when you and I don't have enough storage on our phone, we back it up on a cloud. Well, Platte River Networks, the Colorado company that managed Hillary Clinton's private server, hired a Connecticut company called Datto Incorporated to essentially be their cloud. But Hillary Clinton's emails were never supposed to be backed up on anything but an on-site server. Instead, they made it onto Datto's off-site cloud, and now the company could have Clinton's emails, including the ones she deleted, dating back at least June of 2013. The FBI has told them to preserve all data. And according to emails obtained by Republican Senator Ron Johnson, chair of the Homeland Security Committee, when the FBI began investigating this matter, members of Clinton's team directed Platte River to, quote, cut the backup of emails. In other words, wipe clean any email older than 30 days. In August, an unnamed Platte River employee wrote to a coworker, quoting, "Starting to think this whole thing is covering up some shady blank." Going on to say, quote, "I think if we have it in writing that they told us to cut the backups and that we can go public with our statement saying we have backups since day one, then we were told to trim to 30 days, it would make us look a whole lot better." Whole lot being in capital letters. Here's Senator Johnson. Listen.
This just shows how sloppy and, again, that just reckless disregard for national security interests, the dereliction of duty of Secretary Clinton is being revealed here.
Joining us now with more, Shannon Coffin, former DOJ Assistant Deputy Attorney General and former counsel to Vice President Cheney. Out of all those headlines, we've got the subcontractor saying this is shady, being told to delete some of the backup. It happens while she's under investigation. The FBI actually went into state today and seized 4 computers. They don't do that as part of a political hit job. This is the Obama administration investigating her. So what do you think is the most important headline?
As FOIA requests are coming in, as the State Department is asking for these emails back, she is, through intermediaries, telling her server people, start deleting things. That really sends up a massive red flag, and we're talking about sort of obstruction of justice charges.
The interesting thing, Heather, is that we have heard from Mrs. Clinton that she turned over about 60,000 pages of emails to the State Department. So the ones that we're hearing about, these top secret ones, the highly problematic ones, the sensitive ones, the classified ones, they came out of those she chose to turn over to the State Department. She's told us that she, in fact, deleted 30,000. We have no idea if that number is accurate or not. Could be a lot more than that. She could have deleted 100,000. We don't know. But if you take her at her word that she deleted about 30,000 emails. Well, the FBI is now in the process of recovering those, or maybe they already have completed that process. Presumably, those are the most damaging because she sought to delete them. So while we're having this conversation about the legal and political jeopardy she may be in with the ones that we know about, what is in those that we don't know about?
I can confirm that as part of this monthly FOIA production of former Secretary Clinton's emails, the State Department will be denying in full 7 email chains found in 22 documents representing 37 pages. The documents are being upgraded at the request of the intelligence community because they contain a category of top secret information. I'm not going to speak to the content of these documents. I understand there's great curiosity. I'm just going to put that right out at the top. I am not going to speak to the content of this email traffic. These emails denied in full are among the emails discussed recently by the Intelligence Community Inspector General in a letter to Congress. We will not, however, be confirming or speaking, as I said, to every detail provided in the documents or in the ICIG's letter. One of these emails was also among those identified by the ICIG last summer as possibly containing top secret information.
A U.S. government official says more than a dozen email accounts handled the top secret classified information found on Mrs. Clinton's unsecured server, and there is no evidence they were authorized to receive it. The official said the accounts not only include Clinton, but also her closest aides Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, Jake Sullivan, Philippe Reines, as well as State Department Undersecretary for Management Patrick Kennedy. New documents released after a federal lawsuit show that in June, Kennedy instructed Clinton lawyer David Kendall to delete 25 emails from the backup hard drive because they contained classified information. The topics range from North Korea, a conversation with China's foreign minister, to an arms treaty.
This quiet, cautious letter was damage control both for the State Department and Mrs. Clinton in her presidential campaign. You understand now why the FBI had to come in and intervene.
Former intelligence officer says there is a universal feeling that the Clinton email issue is far more sensitive than the general public realizes, and there's no doubt the intelligence community is conducting damage assessments and evaluating the viability of any exposed operation, Brett.
Okay, we'll follow it. Thank you, Catherine.
Well, there have been a lot of developments in the last 48 hours. In addition, Charles, a U.S. government official confirms to Fox News that more than a dozen email accounts handled the top secret classified information found on Mrs. Clinton's unsecured server, and there is no evidence that they were authorized to receive it. The official said that the email accounts include not only Mrs. Clinton, but also her closest aides, Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, Jake Sullivan, Philippe Reines, as well as State Department Under Secretary for Management Patrick Kennedy. Fox News is pressing the State Department on whether a damage assessment is being done. State Department recently confirmed that the messages in question include the most sensitive kind of intelligence. On January 29th, Fox News first reported that some emails on Clinton's server were just too damaging to release in any form, and the State Department subsequently announced that the 22 top secret emails were being withheld in full, and these were the messages being handled by more than a dozen accounts. This group is particularly problematic because many of these emails, we understand, contain intelligence from multiple agencies, and each agency had to review the document and then give their own decision on the classification. I anticipate that we'll go up over 2,000 classified emails by the time this is all over, and the State Department will also have to confirm that there are more beyond the 22 top secret that are just too sensitive to release in any form.
Because these are not disclosed at all, it makes it obviously much more apparent that somebody was apparently removing the classified markings on State Department communications and getting them onto her home server. That, I think, is the real significance here.
But how can she have culpability if nothing was so designated as classified at the time?
If it was designated classified and the classification was removed according to a protocol that she knew about and wanted, because that was the only way to get it onto her home server, then she is in it up to her eyeballs.
What's the basis of your suspicion that perhaps so-called classified markings would have been removed?
Well, the documents originated someplace. They didn't drop in from Mars. The person who originated them necessarily put classified markings on them because the State Department has said that they won't release any of them. So they were at one point marked. Now, how did the markings get off? I think if you turn to an email exchange between her and one of her staffers back in 2011, you find that she's waiting for a classified set of talking points, and at one point says if they can't get a secure fax, she says turn it into non-paper with no identifying heading and send non-secure. Now that is very particular language relating to the fact that there are 3 communication systems within the government: non-secure, SIPR or secure, and the highest, which is JWICS. The information from SIPR and from JWICS cannot move on the low end system, NIPR. And if you put anything on there that's got those markings on it, it essentially sets off an alarm that alerts the people involved with security. So those markings have to be taken off. And when she said in June of 2011, take the markings off, it becomes apparent that she knew how that system worked.
Assume, for the purpose of my next question, that she played no role in the removal of any designations. Should she have otherwise known this is really sensitive information? This is at a certain level that, of course, it might not have the marking, but it must be classified.
The information is classified, not because it's marked, but because of what the information contains. The marking is put on because it's classified. It's not classified because of the marking. So, for example, if she has signals intelligence or information from a human source that is obviously confidential and secret and relates to intelligence activities of the United States abroad, she'd have to have been a low-grade moron in order not to know that it was classified.
Her first argument was, there are no classified materials. Right. Then she changed it to, I didn't send or receive anything that was marked classified. So let's just say, let's just hypothetically say, Mrs. Clinton and her associates are indicted for conspiracy to violate the espionage laws of the United States by knowingly letting secrets get out. So if she tries to tell that to a jury, guess what the judge is going to say? The judge is going to say, members of the jury, the Secretary of State, who has been trained to identify classified materials is presumed to know what's classified or not, whether it's stamped top secret or not. That would force her to get on the witness stand.
Absolutely.
That would force her to justify how these pictures of Yemen from a satellite are not classified.
Do you feel, with your judicial gut, she is going to wind up getting charged?
Yes. I feel that she's in serious trouble and she doesn't recognize it. I can tell you this, the team of FBI investigators and federal prosecutors that are pursuing her is the highest and best in the Justice Department. Not to criticize other teams. It's absolutely apolitical. It's impervious to political consequences. And do you know who runs the FBI? Jim Comey. Do you remember what he threatened to resign under President Bush because the president wanted him to do something he didn't think was right? Do you think that if they find enough evidence to indict Mrs. Clinton and her colleagues, and the president says no, Mr. Comey will be quiet about it? I don't.
Mrs. Clinton should be consulting very high-powered national security criminal defense lawyers, that is, criminal defense lawyers who have national security clearances so they can see the evidence against her, to negotiate with the FBI, because the case against her is overwhelming, damning, and from her perspective, grave. And when she says there's no there, when she laughs about it, when she says this is the re-suggesting of an old New York Times story, she's effectively mocking the 100 FBI agents that are investigating her.
Even today, she said that she never sent or received classified information.
That infuriates me, Megan, because that's a word game when she says, I neither sent nor received anything marked classified. I'm making the quotation marks with my fingers because nothing is marked classified.
It doesn't change the fact that I never sent or received any material marked classified.
It is marked confidential, secret, top secret. And under top secret, there are 4 sub-markings, the most sensitive of which is this select access privilege, which is what 24 of her emails had on there. That is the most secret information the government has.
And so if she was merely negligent in not protecting it, criminal charges?
Absolutely. I happen to think that intent should be an element of criminal charges. That's just me. This particular law expressly says intent is not an element, meaning the government doesn't have to prove that she intended. Her negligent treatment of national security secrets, her failure to safeguard and store national security secrets
on a server that the Russians and the Chinese may have hacked into.
Correct. Can be the basis for a criminal prosecution. Do you know what type of information is in there? The names of moles, black ops, that is, secret programs that the government wants to deny the existence of. For her to have put that on an open server while she's the Secretary of State is absolutely grossly negligent and must be the basis for an indictment.
We have learned from Catherine and our colleague Pamela Brown and their sources that Mrs. Clinton's top aides regularly received from Mrs. Clinton via her private server top secret emails. These are emails which the aides lacked the security clearance to receive. So this tells us a couple things. One, Mrs. Clinton was so reckless in the manner in which she sent out top secret emails, knowingly sending them to people who weren't authorized to receive them. We know, too, that their acceptance, discussion, and transfer of this is a felony. We know, 3, that the FBI now has leverage. The Justice Department can indict her top aides and trade with them. What would they want? Testimony against Mrs. Clinton in return for a deal with them. This is the way the government works.
I mean, we're talking about Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, Philippe Reines. All of those names have come up. Patrick Kennedy, with regard to people who were in that circle. And one of the things that strikes me is that, you know, it appears that Hillary Clinton felt like she could run her own little, you know, sidebar to the government, right? She had, and they appear to have believed that within their circle, they had a circle of trust, that they weren't worried about passing this stuff around because they've all worked together and known each other very well, and that there was an understanding that was going to be okay. But that's not okay, is it?
Well, no, it's not okay, because in the process of their exchanging top secret emails, like you and I might exchange emails about what studio I'm going to be in and when I'm going to have an interview with you, they wittingly or unwittingly, and under the law it doesn't matter, wittingly or unwittingly, exposed the nation's most important secrets to persons who would cause us ill when they get those secrets. Let me tell you what the FBI is not able to find: an email account at the State Department in Mrs. Clinton's name.
Yeah.
Mrs. Clinton used her private server for all of her governmental email. So that
she claims
means,
that was completely legal.
Well, it is certainly not legal for her to have caused top secret information to go to this non-secure site. And who did she talk to the top secret information with, aside from her aides? The president himself. The president himself is sending her an email, and he must see up there. It doesn't say state.gov. It says Clinton.
So now the question becomes what the Department of Justice does and how much longer it's going to take for the FBI to make a conclusion from their investigation here. What do you think the time frame is?
Jim Comey, the director of the FBI, told us in October he expected a recommendation by January 15th. That's a month ago. But in fairness to him and to the FBI, they keep going down these rabbit holes and they find more things to investigate. The investigation alone about whether or not she gave favors to foreign governments who hired her husband to give speeches and contributed to the Clinton Foundation, that investigation alone has hundreds of thousands of pages of documents in it. So the FBI's goal, I believe, is to make a discrete set of recommendations at one time. They're in no rush. They're not political. Their eyes are not on the Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton race. Their eyes are on the national security and the criminal laws of the United States of America, which they have sworn to enforce and uphold.
Both sides that, feel that Jim Comey is a person of great integrity and that he will make the recommendation based on what his investigation finds.
I would echo that view.
What happens after that?
Well, then it's a decision for the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch. She may feel she has a conflict because of her political contributions. She may call this politically. She may call it on the straight and narrow. If she rejects a recommendation from the FBI to indict, the repercussions against Mrs. Clinton will be, in my view, as catastrophic to her political views as if her political career as if she had been indicted. You tell me if you think the following was secret, top secret, or confidential. Satellite images of military installations at an unnamed country in the Middle East.
I'd call that secret and confidential.
Interception of telephone communication and email communication, foreign agents in the Middle East.
Secret and confidential.
The travel itinerary of the now late Ambassador Christopher Stevens in Libya.
Secret and confidential.
The true name and identity of a CIA agent operating under deep cover.
This isn't hard, Judge. Well, I mean, it's obvious, right, to anyone.
There are different varieties of espionage. If you sell American secrets to the enemy, that is the highest category of espionage. That's the Rosenbergs in the early 50s. Mrs. Clinton is probably at the other end of that, which is a knowing and willful failure to preserve and keep secure the national security secrets that the government entrusted her with. But she will probably say, because she said this 100 times, I neither sent nor received anything marked classified. Nothing is marked classified.
How does that actually matter? Because it can be classified after the fact. And again, this information that you just brought up, it's all common sense would tell you classified.
Correct, Trish. Much of it is presumed classified. What makes it classified is the nature of its content, not whether the word top secret or secret is stamped on it. But think of how she's parsing words, a la her husband. It depends on what the meaning of the word is. Yeah. Nothing was marked classified. She's correct. She's technically correct because that's not one of the markings. When Hillary diverted all of her governmental email traffic to the server that she and her husband...
The private server.
The private server. And then Judicial Watch filed its complaint in the Freedom of Information Act. And then the State Department said, we don't have anything. And then the New York Times revealed the existence of the private server. Then Hillary did two things. She downloaded 55,000 emails from the private server, and she wiped off or attempted to destroy or erase what she said were personal. She took the 55,000 that she downloaded and handed them in a flash drive to her lawyer. It turns out that among those were classified and secret. So the State Department says to her lawyer, who lacks a security clearance, you have classified materials in the flash drive. Before you release them to anybody, would you remove certain words? Now, normally, the State Department would do this on its own, and that's the normal thing you do. You redact the secret part, you white it out, and you reveal that which is not secret because the law is transparency. But this is not a normal case. obviously, because in this case, she took all the information, she decided what to give back, she decided what to erase, she decided what to give to her lawyer. Now her lawyer's holding a hot potato. He can't read it, he can't look at it, he can't redact
and this is to presume that
he can't get rid of it.
Read it. I mean, it's been some time since it's been in his possession.
Correct. So it's odd for the State Department to do this, but they really have no choice. Should he have this? No, I don't blame him. He's the lawyer, and she gave it to him. She should never have had it. She should never have given it to him. She should never have made these decisions, which to erase and which to return, because they were all property of the government.
Even in the beginning, when she got to decide which emails to put in that flash drive, it was her decision.
Yes.
So she can go through all the emails. No, that was family pictures. I'll keep that.
I think we'll find this out when the FBI makes its recommendation, that they have pierced her efforts to wipe the server clean. I don't think she succeeded in doing that. I think the FBI succeeded. It's the feeling I get from the snippets of information that come to us from various sources, that the FBI succeeded in locating that which she thought she wiped clean.
What about this bribe thing that's come out of left field with the Atlantic Monthly?
This is very, very serious. These are a series of emails released pursuant to these Freedom of Information Act requests, which is how all her nightmare began, in which it appears that one of her top aides said to a reporter, "We will give you a copy of her speech before she gives the speech, providing you write this, this, and this about it."
Wow.
That is a form of bribery, which is a form of public corruption. Question, did Mrs. Clinton herself know about this? This may be one of the reasons the FBI has not yet come up with a recommendation about whether or not to indict, because the deeper they dig, the more potential
deluge. They can't deal with the deluge.
The more potential areas for investigation of potential criminal activity they find.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. All right.
The viewer. Let's talk to the public. They're like, who cares about our emails? Can you explain why these are so important?
These are important because they show the manner and methods by which the United acquires foreign intelligence. And they name the names of people who supply United States intelligence. People in foreign countries who, if their names came out, would be dead. They name the names of American agents who work with these people. People who, if their names came out, would be dead. And she has shown a cavalier attitude about preserving these secrets, which violates an oath she took when she became Secretary of State, and which violates the same federal criminal statute that was used to prosecute General Petraeus. Now, a few minutes ago, you asked me, why should the American public be concerned about this woman? Because she wants to be the President of the United States. And she's a felon, and she should be indicted for it.
Press is reporting there's been 22 emails. There's actually more than that. And if I could just give a little of my background. I was Air Force pilot for 14 years, flew the B-1, one of the most sensitive weapon systems we have. As you said, I sit on the House Intelligence Committee. Again, access to some of the most sensitive information we have. And I have never read anything that's more sensitive than what these emails contain. They do reveal classified methods, they do reveal classified sources, and they do reveal human assets. I can't imagine how anyone could be familiar with these emails, whether they're sending them or receiving them, and not realize that these are highly classified. But you know, the question I think that we have to grapple with here, I think there's a legal process that will play out, but I think we have to ask ourselves this question: did Hillary Clinton demonstrate the judgment and the respect for protocol that would allow her to protect national security? And when I read these emails, and when I see how she has exposed some of the most sensitive information, or potentially exposed that, I don't know how we can say again that she has demonstrated that
Understood.
judgment.
So let me ask you, when you go back to her statement on this, she said, you know, I did not send or receive any documents that were marked classified.
Yeah.
You read them. Is she the person sending or receiving this information that you say is clearly classified, regardless of the marking on it? And that I would assume that you would assume that she would know that as Secretary of State when she looked at that content.
It's a ridiculous assertion. I mean, my heavens, if I received an email saying, here's the names and addresses and phone numbers of 10 of our undercover agents in Pakistan, I would know, and by the way, the email didn't say that,
I'm using that as an example, I would know that that was classified. I wouldn't look for a heading and go, well, there's no heading on there, therefore it's unclassified. I mean, she has to understand. She has to demonstrate the judgment to say this is clearly classified, right, and she didn't do that. This isn't some vast right-wing conspiracy. For heaven's sakes, this were Obama administration officials who have told us that these emails were so classified they can't be released. This wasn't something that's coming from the right. It's coming from this current administration. So her argument isn't with me, it's with the president and with his administration regarding that.
There are about 1,340 emails that we know of so far that had classified information, whether it be sensitive, classified, or top secret.
Let's start with Hillary Clinton and these 22 emails that apparently now the public will not get to see because the State Department says and the Justice Department says they are too damaging. What do you know about them?
Well, as you said, they're not 22 independent emails. There's some back and forth. What we know is that this is information that when you look at it, you should recognize it goes towards sources and methods and classified operations.
According to the latest emails obtained by Judicial Watch through the Freedom of Information Act, many of Hillary Clinton's top staffers at the State Department knew from the start that Clinton fully intended to attempt to totally bypass government email systems so as to avoid future disclosures due to the Freedom of Information Act. And this was days before Clinton was sworn in as Secretary of State. This is why Clinton was never even assigned a .gov email address. According to one email dated January 24, 2009, just days before Clinton was sworn in as Secretary of State, Undersecretary for Management Patrick F. Kennedy wrote, "The standalone separate network PC is a great idea." In another email, also dated January 24th, Louis Lukens, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Executive Director of the Secretariat, agreed with the illegal bypassing of the government system. I think we should go ahead and set up a standalone PC in the Secretary's office, connect to the Internet, but not through our system, to enable her to check her emails from her desk. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton blasted those involved. That these records were withheld from the American people until now is scandalous and shows the criminal probe of Hillary Clinton's email system should include current and former officials of the Obama administration.
This is a huge revelation put out, as you say, by the Obama-appointed Inspector General. If there's a conspiracy here, the Inspector General's in on it, the FBI's in on it, the intelligence community's in on it, Fox News is in on it, NBC News, CBS, New York Times, everyone's in on it except for Hillary Clinton. I mean, if this sounds ludicrously implausible, it's because it is.
I will repeat, I did not send or receive classified material.
The Inspector General, whose job it is to oversee the intelligence community, had to get special clearance just to review this case. This is the most secret type of material that anyone can look at in the U.S. government, and it was sitting there on that unsecure, totally improper server for virtually anyone to hack into.
Well, Steve, I have friends that are in the FBI, and they tell me they're ready to indict. They're ready to recommend an indictment. And they also say that if the Attorney General does not indict, they're going public. So one way or another, either she's going to be indicted and that process begins, or we try her in the public eye with her campaign. One way or another, she's going to have to face these charges.
We also now know that Sidney Blumenthal sent an email that revealed the name of a CIA asset in that system. And that was a CIA asset in Libya, of all places.
Their concern was that there appears to be clearly a double standard. Had this happened to someone serving in the government, their clearance would have already been pulled, and they probably would certainly be under investigation. Depending on the level of disclosure, it's entirely possible they could even be in pretrial confinement for that matter.
There's no way that someone, a senior government official who has been handling classified information for a good chunk of their adult life could not have known that this information ought to be classified, whether it was marked or not.
Pompeo can't get into specifics because the intelligence is so sensitive, but said sources, methods, and lives were exposed.
When things get classified top secret, it's about things like where assets are and how our soldiers and sailors and Marines move about the world. When you read those emails, you realize that having them in an unsecured environment certainly put American national security at risk.
I've had a chance to read these 22 top secret emails, and I can assure everyone watching today that there's important national security information contained in those. And they were, for months and months, stored on a server that was not protected in the way that national security information must be protected. It has presented enormous risk to soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines all across the world, and I'm confident the FBI's investigation will continue.
It's going to continue. Obviously, there's a possibility of an indictment. There's been a lot of discussion about whether there should be an indictment. You all the time review classified information, obviously, because of your position. Question, based on what you know, based on the emails that you've read and the things you've seen that were on her server, what do you think would happen to you if you'd done the same thing? What would you expect?
So, Leland, the first thing that would happen, I would lose my security clearance and be removed from the House Intelligence Committee. And that would be totally appropriate. It would be the right thing to do if I had demonstrated such a willingness to intentionally circumvent the efforts to keep America's secrets safe, right? This wasn't accidental slippage. She didn't make an error in allowing this on her server. She set up the server with the intention of circumventing the very system designed to safeguard this. Would you
expect to be indicted, knowing what you know now?
I'd have lots of counsel working to ensure that I got an outcome that was as favorable to me as possible.
Everybody who has a security clearance has an individual obligation to protect the information. You can't just turn a blind eye and pretend it never happened and pretend it's unclassified information.
I think she has to acknowledge she's made some terrible misjudgments and errors, particularly on the server. Look, the vast right-wing conspiracy didn't put the server in her damn closet.
What she did was do government business on a private email server. That's obviously wrong. That's just a matter of common sense. And even worse, over this personal server, she sent and received classified information and clearly knew it. That's why so many elementary security precautions have been violated here that it's just hard for people who have been in the government and actually had this kind of classified information to understand how she got away with it for so long. And I believe within the FBI and within the Justice Department, the people believe very deeply that if you can't prosecute high-level officials, then you don't have a rule of law anymore, because the lesser-ranking officials say, but why are you prosecuting me when you didn't prosecute the Secretary of State?
Clearly, all America's allies were aware of the problem with Hillary Clinton's system. And it does raise the question, how did foreign governments communicate with the Secretary of State? Foreign ministers, more than heads of government, get by on their personal relationships. And in this case, Hillary Clinton was unable to forge any personal relationships because, by definition, communications from foreign governments are confidential and classified for the very basic reason that if they're not, then they're not going to talk to you. So if they can't get in touch with her, if they have to go through Huma Abedin or Cheryl Mills or whoever, and then those two have to somehow relay the information to Hillary Clinton, it helps explain why for those 4 years it seemed like America was kind of cut off from the world. All the foreign ministers can talk to each other, but none of them could talk to Hillary Clinton. Look, it's obvious that the other guys, the good guys, the allies, knew the problems with her server. So we can conclude that the Russians and the Chinese and the mullahs in Tehran and all the other people did as well. And the question then is what does Moscow or Beijing do with that information? There's all kinds of people they can give it to who would find that information very useful. I think this is devastating to Hillary Clinton's campaign because there's only two possible explanations. There's a level of deviousness and criminality, which, as we discussed earlier, you can cite different statutes she's broken. If her defense from that is that simply she's just a chump, she's just an an idiot and she was out of the loop, then that means she can't run on her expertise and experience as Secretary of State when she's running for president. But the two things are connected. You can't. This is a disaster for her because it goes to competence, it goes to judgment, it goes to all the most basic issues you ask of a presidential candidate. I mean, I think what's clear from the bubble she was in is that she saw herself as a Clinton first and as an American government official second. She's hedged in by Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills, and a couple of people who act as her gatekeepers. The world can't get to talk to America's Secretary of State. But Sid Blumenthal, who we are expected to believe is a tireless charity worker because he's on the payroll of the Clinton Foundation, so tireless charity worker Sid Blumenthal gets to communicate directly with Hillary Clinton because he's part of the Clinton family circle, but major figures around the world aren't. And that is the issue here, that she decided that she was essentially part of Clinton Inc., who happened to have a little part-time job working for the United States government, rather than as a full-time servant of the American people.
All right, now, let's talk a little bit about her answers here, because the answers that she has been giving reporters over and over again about these emails is becoming stunningly transparent. Now, when she was in Nevada on Tuesday, we heard it again. Here's what she said.
I did not send classified material, and I did not receive any material that was marked or designated classified, which is the way you know whether something is.
But isn't that all just beside the point here? Secretary of State, you're in charge. You're the one that's got to be held responsible because the buck stops here. And that's what she consistently seems to run over every single answer, yes?
Yeah, correct, but it's worse than that. Now, let's give Hillary the benefit of the doubt. When an email arrived on her private server that had classified material in it, okay, she didn't know it was classified when she opened it. Of course, the first question then is, by having a private server, she was encouraging classified information to be sent to her because it was the only way to email anything to her. But once she opened it and kept it on her server in the basement or in the kitchen sink or something, then she was holding and having classified material in an unsecured location, just like Sandy Berger was when he put it in his socks, and Petraeus was when he put it in his safe, and Deutsch in his desk. And secondly, she undoubtedly sent that material on to people. Maybe it wasn't classified, but as Secretary of State, she should have classified it, and her failure to do so itself is actionable.
Dick,
so you have a whole range of this stuff, and the mere act of it passing through. Think of it this way. Drugs arrive in the mail, okay, illegal drugs. Well, you can't be held responsible if someone sends you heroin, because you may not know it is. But then you open it, you see it's heroin. And then you put it in your kitchen cabinet. Well, now you're guilty of possession. And then without labeling it heroin, you send it on to somebody else. Now you're guilty of trafficking. And that's kind of an analogy of what she's up against here.
Well, look, in terms of what people are going to get slapped with, look at the front pages today in terms of what Secretary Clinton is getting slapped with.
Are you now saying that that is an issue in November, that this is going to harm her electability?
Well, I think, what you just said is true. Republicans are talking about. What I have said is that there is a legal process underway right now. And I'm not going to politicize that issue. I am not attacking Hillary Clinton on that issue. I stand by what I said in the first debate. Republicans, needless to say, have a different point of view on that.
Recently, General Petraeus was convicted of a crime for having secure items in an unsecure place. She says she didn't transmit classified information. Her schedule's classified. Like, if you want to know when she goes to yoga, you say, oh, that's really benign, but what if you're a terrorist? That would be an important item to know if she's going to yoga that day. So when her schedule is transmitted via email, it should go through a secure device. When she says, oh, for convenience sakes, I didn't want to use two phones, well, one, someone should inform her you can put two email apps on one phone. But the other thing is that her convenience shouldn't trump national security. If she's having a conversation with the president via email, which she admits that she did, do you think if you wanted to read it and you did a Freedom of Information Act, do you think they'll give it to you? They're going to say it's classified. And yet she's saying, oh, I didn't do anything classified. She probably did hundreds of emails that are potentially sensitive or classified that should have been routed through a secure server so national security could be protected.
And Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being the commander-in-chief of the United States. In fact, one of her first acts as president may very well be to pardon herself, because Hillary Clinton stored classified information on her private server, and Hillary Clinton lied to the families of those 4 brave Americans who lost their life in Benghazi. And anyone who lies to the families of Americans who have died in the service of this country can never be commander-in-chief of the United States.
First of all, Hillary is now officially under investigation for the emails. Big. That's big. You know, if you look at it, look, I don't think anything's going to happen to her because it's all Democrats that are doing the investigation. I mean, it's the way it is, right? If the prosecutors are honorable, and they may be, if they're fair, if they're just, sadly, bad stuff has to happen because what she did is very criminal and very serious, and it's too bad. It's too bad.
Hillary Clinton's problem is that no one trusts her because she's not been forthcoming. She's not told the truth. The email issue is an issue of national security. She put her political ambitions ahead of the national security interests of this country. Hackers can get into any place, even in our own secure servers in the federal government, but to be able to have a private server, not expect people to, with classified information going over those servers, I mean, this is something that she has to come clean on.
Damn, it feels good to be a Clinton. Damn, it feels good to be a Clinton. A shameless politician always plays her cards right. Got a crew for the fight on the airwaves. Lapdogs in the press keep their mouths tight. Cause a Clinton never needs to explain why it is what they done or with who. A real Clinton knows that they're entitled, and you don't get to know what they do.
What difference does it make?
For a Clinton, what's loaded in some fat Apple file? A Clinton plays the victim for promotion. A Clinton kills it off with a smile. Damn, it feels good to be a Clinton. A server full of secrets ain't no thing. Damn, it feels good to be a Clinton. Nothing ever hits with the sting.
Today, Mrs. Clinton again claimed ignorance.
There is no classified marked information on those emails sent or received by me.
Clinton was pressed in the same interview on her signed 2009 non-disclosure agreement, where she acknowledged as Secretary of State markings are irrelevant. Quote, classified information is marked or unmarked, including oral communications. Clinton pointed to her aides.
There has to be some marking, some indication that someone down the chain had thought that this was classified, and that was not the case.
But according to experts, federal regulations require security clearance holders to speak up when classified information is not in secure channels.
First, let me say that I am confident that I never sent nor received any information that was classified at the time it was sent and received. And what I think you're seeing here is a very typical kind of discussion, to some extent disagreement among various parts of the government over what should or should not be publicly released. And I want to underscore this because when I turned over my 55,000 pages, I did so to help the State Department. They had asked all the former secretaries to please give any information because they were having some challenges with their record keeping. So I did. But then I said, okay, let's make it public. Now, if I just turned it over, we would not be having this conversation. But when I said, hey, I want it to be public, it has to go through the FOIA process. That's what's going on here. And I am, going to continue to say I want it to be made public as soon as it possibly can. And we will do whatever we can to try to get the process to move along. I did not receive anything that was marked as classified. This material is all on the unclassified system of the State Department. So it's already on the unclassified system. If we were not asking for it to be made public, there would not be a debate. This is all about my desire to have transparency and make the information public.
While they are calling and saying Hillary Clinton has asked for these to be released, it actually wasn't up to her. It was the court that ordered that these be made public by certain dates. By today, they were all supposed to be out there. Now we're going to wait until February. So yes, she's called for it, but that wasn't a favor. That's the Freedom of Information Act, that reporters like you and I can go and the public can write requests saying, share these public records with me.
We have Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, a public interest group investigating and prosecuting government corruption. How was the Judicial Watch able to get these documents?
Well, we had to sue in federal court to get them. They weren't voluntarily disclosed.
Everything I did was permitted. My use of personal email was allowed. I fully complied with every rule that I was governed by. There was nothing that did not give me the full authority to decide how I was going to communicate. I never sent classified material on my email. There was no law. There was no regulation.
The problem for Hillary Clinton that will not go away.
In a way, reminds me of the Nixon tapes.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material.
Emails from Hillary Clinton's server contained classified information.
I am confident that I never sent nor received any information that was classified at the time it was sent and received.
Their review of just 40 of 30,000 emails found 4 of them had classified information.
Are you confident that those 4 emails were not classified at the time that you were transmitting them, sending them and receiving them?
Yes.
The messages were classified when they were sent and are classified now.
I'm certainly well aware of the classification requirements and did not send classified material.
305 documents flagged? Right, that's pretty much what it means, Luke.
I did not receive anything that was marked as classified.
That, we are told, is not the legal standard.
I've never had a subpoena.
You did get one in March. Couldn't be more plain, the Honorable Hillary R. Clinton.
And you think the American public is that stupid?
The server will remain private.
Hillary Clinton turning her private email server over to the Justice Department.
She has insisted she was not going to turn over that private server.
The campaign continues to say that this is not a criminal investigation.
We decided to call the FBI. They said all of our investigations are criminal.
I don't throw anything away.
Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something?
I don't know.
Clinton has said she wiped the server clean.
You tried to wipe the whole server. You didn't ask the question.
I'm not, I have no idea. I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails. I have an iPad, a mini iPad, an iPhone, and a BlackBerry. What I did was legally permitted.
Clinton private email violated clear-cut State Department rules.
This is the usual partisanization, which I may have just made up a word.
It's hard to claim this is all just a partisan witch hunt when the Justice Department under a Democratic administration is looking into the whole email mess.
It's not anything that people talk to me about as I travel around the country.
It shouldn't go away on the substance, and voters do care about it.
I recently launched a Snapchat account. I love it. Those messages disappear all by themselves.
Well, back in October, I stood on the floor of the United States Senate and outlined concerns that I had about the evolving scandal involving Secretary Clinton's use of a private unsecured email server during her service as Secretary of State. I said at the time that her behavior not only violated the president's promise to be the most transparent administration in history. I remember him making that statement during his first inaugural address. But it also represented a violation of the public trust. And now we learn of very, very serious national security concerns which I'm going to speak about in just a moment. Because we know that the Department of Justice is headed by the Attorney General, a political appointee of the President of the United States who serves at the pleasure of the President, because of the conflict of interest by asking Attorney General Lynch to investigate and perhaps even prosecute somebody in the Obama administration, I called upon the Department of Justice and the Attorney General in particular to appoint a special counsel to investigate the matter, given those obvious conflicts of interest. Of course, we read in the paper and understand from his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee just recently that Director Comey of the FBI if the FBI is conducting an investigation into this matter, as they should. For myself, I would say that the FBI, notwithstanding what I've said about the federal government's poor reputation generally, that the FBI is still very widely respected for its integrity, as it must be. But the FBI cannot go further and convene a grand jury to consider potential violations of the criminal law. That can only be done by a court at the request of a prosecutor with the Justice Department. If we're going to be true to the promise of equal justice under the law, those are the words carved above the entryway to the United States Supreme Court. If we're going to be true to that promise, we have to be able to demonstrate that the same rules and the same laws apply to everybody in this country, whether you're the President of the United States or you're among one of our nation's humblest citizens. We are all equal before the law, or at least we should be. And it is a violation of the public trust when people act as if the rules that apply to everybody else don't apply to them. Well, so far the Attorney General has declined to appoint a special counsel. But I think even in the interim, since I first made that request and it has been declined, we see why it is even more important today than it was back in October. The administration, the Obama administration, has demonstrated time and time again precisely why we need the decision-making in this case as far removed from White House politics as it can possibly be. For example, the President in October went on television and publicly opined on the results of the ongoing criminal probe. He said, and I quote, "I don't think it posed a national security problem," close quote. That's the President of the United States.
I can tell you that this is not a situation in which America's national security was endangered.
Well, based on his comment, one might reasonably conclude that the White House was somehow privy and in consultation with the FBI about their ongoing criminal investigation. Now, subsequently, I had a chance to ask Director Comey whether in fact that was the case, and he said absolutely not. So, as with the President's reckless remarks on television in October, either the White House has information that they should not have about the status of this ongoing criminal investigation by the FBI, or they're sending a signal to the FBI and the Department of Justice that they want this to go away. It's hard for me to interpret these comments, both by the President and by his press secretary, as anything other than trying to influence the FBI and the Department of Justice on the outcome that the administration prefers. That, Mr. President, is completely inappropriate. It is outrageous, and it's got to stop. So today I'm back on the Senate floor where I started months ago to make the very same point, but with a greater sense of urgency and with a lot of new information that's come to light. I believe that Secretary Clinton has likely violated multiple criminal statutes. For a Secretary of State to conduct official business, including transmitting and receiving information classified at the SAP level on a private unsecured server when sensitive national defense information would likely pass through it is not just a lapse of judgment. It's reckless disregard for the security of the American people, not to mention the lives of our intelligence professionals that are involved in gaining this important intelligence. It's important for us to protect ourselves against our adversaries. In light of the unprecedented nature of the case and the multiple conflicts presented to the Department of Justice, I can see no other appropriate course of action than for Attorney General Loretta Lynch to appoint a special counsel to pursue this matter wherever the facts may lead. That need is underscored by the apparent inability of the White House to resist the temptation to try to influence or, at worst, obstruct the current investigation. So I hope the Attorney General seriously considers my request to appoint a special counsel, given the conflict of interest and the extraordinary circumstances of this case. Because in the end, it's the right thing to do for the American people. And if the U.S. government, including Congress and the administration, are going to regain the trust and confidence of the American people, they need to know that the chips will fall where they may, and that our law enforcement officials like the FBI and the Department of Justice, they will pursue these cases wherever the facts may lead, and that there isn't a separate set of rules for high government officials like the Secretary of State and then you and me.